Hey sprinters, it's Janae here to brighten and lighten and ignite your day. We're on week 2, Power of Intention, and day 8, which is about resistance. So when you decide to join the race, which we did in intention, right? The next thing the official is going to say is, on your marks. This means you're shaking it up, you're taking your first step. And when we choose to take our first step after we've committed to something, immediately you are going to be smacked with resistance. So this is where the hard part comes in. I don't know if you noticed, I hope you enjoyed doing the power of intention. Oftentimes I like to stay in that state because that's the fun, dreamy state, but it's once we make that first step toward reality, how to really do the work, that's when the resistance comes. It's like the universe rushes in to support your decision, yet at the same time, the forces are rushing in to resist it. This is what Steven Pressfield talks a ton about in his book, The War of Art. And it's one of the gist reviews that I did, so I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, that you can go ahead and review that book. But we need to combat resistance. And once I really understood it, and again, it could be, different ways that you might refer to resistance and, spiritual warfare, battle, whatever it is, but whenever we choose to be convicted to something that really matters, we're gonna have to fight our way. So that's why it's crystal clear clarity that we need to be totally intent on where we want to go, because our first step is often the hardest and that we are going to get resistance. So how do we combat it? First of all is understanding, what is it? What does resistance looks like to you? And it's not always what it looks like to be. Okay, that's what I love about in his book. He has a lot of different examples of how it might show up. And I was super surprised to hear some of them, because some of them are pretty positive, right? Some are like, you know what, why don't you just go and get a little more training and workshop? You need to learn a little bit more before you're ready to share your stuff. And I thought, okay, that's cool. I like to learn, and you're probably right. But he says that shows up in resistance. Again, it's taking us away from the action. Resistance can be other people, criticism, obvious things like that seem resistance. It can be crazy things that happen. And I'm going to share with you 2 different examples of resistance that happen with me, and specifically, I would say around this program, just to give you a good example of what that means. As I'm doing that, I really want you to think about, what are those patterns of resistance that show up for you? Because those are the ones that you'll need to combat, just like I've had to combat. Because here's the deal, resistance is always there, and it's gonna keep expanding and expanding and expanding till at some point something will snap, and hopefully it's not us. But we have to break through it. And in fact, Gay Hendricks talks about this as upper limiting. We've set this upper limit that we don't feel we can get past it. It's like the whole concept of the 4-minute mile, right? Until Roger Bannister actually broke that 4-minute mile barrier, it was thought it couldn't be done. And from there, many, many others followed in suit quite soon after. So it's that resistance to get past. So again, I want to share an example. So I took about a year sabbatical when my boys went into school, after many heartbreaks with my business, trying to decide, do I stick with this, or do I go back to corporate some way and get more of a traditional job? And so here comes the summer before my boys are getting back into school, and my mom and I take a mother-daughter trip to West Bend, Iowa. And you might wonder, what's in West Bend, Iowa? Well, there's a beautiful cornfield around there. It's not a lot, except this incredibly amazing display, what's called the Shrine of the Grotto of Redemption. And I'll have a link for you so you can go ahead and see this if you've never been there before. But I'm just gonna put this up here for a second. This was probably about the best page that I could explain, but it's a city block made out of amazing stones and precious gems by truly one person's commitment to give back to God. And stone by stone by stone for over 40 years, this priest labored to create the shrine to honor his love for Jesus. And what's amazing, of course, since then, others have helped in this legacy. But what was amazing is being there, literally in a city block wide with cornfields all around you, and just looking around and seeing stone by stone what one person did was completely overwhelming. And I remember just being so in awe and inspired, and also praying, like, okay, God, what's it for me? What's kind of my little stone castle that I'm trying to build? And I just got this whisper in my heart that was like, you know what? So much of what I've built, and you too, right, is invisible. Stone by stone, positive word by positive action, encouragement, acts of service. We too have created, different monuments in our lives, but so much has gone unnoticed. It's invisible. And I just, in my mind, all these kind of big projects that I had been working on for years that were visible to me but invisible to most of the world, I just had this sense of saying, you need to give it a chance. You need to stop resisting sales and marketing and let it be known. And so I stood in front of this beautiful stone wall with a heart. So I'm going to show you this because it's a pretty special picture to me. So here I am in front of this stone wall with this heart, and we took this picture, and my mom said, oh my gosh, Janine, look at it. It looks almost like you look like an angel with wings, with these heart wings. And I felt like, she goes, I guess you have your angel assignment. And it was at that time that I recommitted to building my stone wall, to make manifest these creations that I had been creating really in the confines of my own home, to start sharing them. The minute, I am not joking, I got home, the resistance started. Okay, so after being a weekend alone for guys and taking care of our 3 boys, it's not an easy task. So John was pretty worn out, depleted. He had a cold. He was disengaged. In fact, he just said, I'm going to the basement to sleep kind of for the week and recover from his cold. So he was out. The kids were crazy, cranky. I'm totally over here inspired, and I came to like, whoa, really low energy. So I had all of these mixed messages and resistance going on at home, different things at work. I mean, I had just stuff kind of blowing up at home and work, and I remember just being like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? I mean, do I really think I'm going to be able to do this? And there was a point then where I needed to commit to this course that would help me with the sales and marketing. And it was at that time that inspirational teacher said that sometimes this resistance comes because as soon as you put the gas pedal down, you're ready to go, boom, resistance is going to want to put on the brake. But you can't brake. You got to move past that. So that was a big determining point where I'll tell you what, that kind of resistance that I received for a week of just everything going against me, and then that just triggered all these internal thoughts, because this is a lot of the internal resistance. I was ready to be done, truly ready to be done. So then fast forward, when I was actually then creating this class and building it, when it came time to market it, oh my gosh, same thing happened. So much resistance that in fact I felt it in my body, my body went really weak, and my mind, it was going crazy. It was that time of the month. I mean, it was just like everything was resisting me to actually go forward with it. But I did it, and it helped. It just helped to move forward. And there's a story in here that I just want to summarize in this book called The things that grab your heart and won't let go, stories that give you goosebumps by Mac Anderson. So one of my favorite companies in their book, Simple Truths. And there's a story I'm just going to summarize in here, but it's a great example of resistance. It's about this gentleman named John Baker. And it says he was too short and slight to be a runner for his high school track team, but he loved it so much. And his best friend was a promising runner, but really wanted nothing to do with the sport. But he was able to get onto the track team because he convinced his friend, who was a good runner, to get on, but he was really the one who did it. And yet it goes on and on to show how, despite all the odds, this gentleman, John, continued to lead the way to the finish line. The crowd assumed it was one of his favorites, but to everyone's amazement, it was John Baker leading the way to the finish line. In his first meet, he blew away the field and set a new meet record. Baker just kept saying, am I doing my best? Am I doing my best? One more, one more, one more. And it just kept moving forward and forward. So then the story goes on to say how that was his entire focus, was to pass the runner in front of him. As he progressed, it wasn't a fluke. He continued to do as well. He entered the University of New Mexico, continued to keep running to the next level. On and on. He kept, continuing to resist everything going against him and persist forward. And then he, even after graduating from college, he set his sights on the 1972 Olympics to train. And he became a coach as well. And despite all the obstacles, he continued to resist. And what's even more inspiring besides all this is that at such a young age, he had to resist as well, because that's when he was ready to train for the Olympics, is when he found out he had cancer. And then he really had to have the fight for his life. And so the resistance can come in so many forms, something very obvious to small little things. So I really want you to think about and track, what is the resistance? Because as much as I want to say it's not there, we need, and you want to run from it, we got to go through it. And that's really what this idea of a breakthrough is to break through the resistance. So your 1, 2, 3, choose what's best for me, is number 1, is to determine what your resistor patterns are. Again, for me, it's definitely my family dynamics around here, because as soon as they're completely off, my mind goes, well, they're my first priority. I don't have time to do this, so I'm going to have to wait. And then it's other kinds of resistance that, okay, I'm still not ready yet. I got to do this. I got to learn this. I'm going to do this. This isn't ready. I won't make the money. What are those internal and external resistors that go on for you? Determine those patterns, and we're going to work on those in this integration, because we can have all the dreams in the world and do everything right in the power of attention, but if we can't figure out how to persist when we experience resistance, boom, it's over, it's done. So this part is super critical, and it's really helped me knowing it's coming. Like, I know it. Like, I knew coming home, I didn't quite know how it would show up, but I knew I was going to get resistance. So not that it's any easier, but when you do expect it and you know that you're ready to do great things and you've committed to make your life better and other people around you in any way, you will experience that. So that's your 1 and done. 2, good for you, is I want you to find some kind of a symbol that you can have out in front of you for the next part of our sprint to symbolize that you've put a stake in the ground for your resistance. So I'm going to give you an example. So I have here this little Zen garden that I've had out in our screen porch. So what I'm going to do in front of you to symbolize this is to draw a line in the sand. And this just means, like, when we draw a line in the sand, right? We say, no more. No more. Whatever it takes, I have drawn my line in the sand. Fortunately, you can't see it too good, but trust me, it's there. And then I am going to place this in a certain spot. And what it tells me, it's going to trigger, whenever I see this, I have a trigger when that resistance comes to say, no more. I've drawn my line in the sand. All right, number 3 is key. This is where you can then, create your breakthrough to resistance story. I love this. I was listening to this one author who again struggled. It's always kind of to make that first big break, the struggle that it takes, and he just kept telling himself, this is just gonna make my good breakthrough story later. So what's going to be your future breakthrough resistance story? You're making it right now, right here, right in this moment. So make it official, make it be a story that will compel you to move forward and pass this resistance. I'm here for you, we're gonna work through together, and just like runners, you always wanna kind of run behind the runner behind you to break some of that resistance. There's gonna be all these tips and strategies to help you. Internally and externally, we can do this, and we'll persist through the resistance. From my heart to yours, be love.